Whoa! Oh, hey guys. Hello, everyone. It's the 29th of March. It's 2010. This is Day 9 Daily. This is the 91st one. 91st Day 9 Daily. So that's great. I'm in I guess a weird mood today. It's just weird. Everything about it is just very unusual, I guess I'd say. And I'm just briefly adjusting my little camera over here to the right. It looks so good. I can't wait to transition over. So I'm like really tired because my body just naturally woke me up at like 4:45 a.m. this morning. It's like 10 p.m. now, and I'm just like, it's like 9:45. God, I can't wait to go to bed. Because I mentioned that I was like really sick. Like I actually went to the hospital like 2 weeks ago. And when I got out, I was basically like sleeping all day because I was on some awesome medication. But then, like when I got better, my body just adjusted to like the worst possible time to wake up. I don't know if this has happened to you, but I just like woke up and it was like 1 a.m. and my body's like, time to get up for the day. And I was like, it's 1 a.m. My body's like, too bad, man. My body's an asshole. So now I've been trying to slowly push that forward. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If you get up at like 5:15. Then, you just got up early, you sound productive. But if you get up at like 4:45, just, something's wrong. It just feels gross. And so I like had to go to class at like the crack of dawn as well, so I'm like there. And afterwards, I'm just hanging out and I was watching LZ Gamer's stream, which is a lot of fun. And my laptop crashed, so I like logged back on, and I was like, what happened at the end of that game? And it was like, please type in your nickname to put any messages. So I put in like Day 9. And everyone was like, "Is this a real Day 9?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. It could. I mean, what happened in the game? Did he win?" And people were like, "That isn't the real Day 9." And I'm like, "Oh, well, still, like, what happened?" And they start quizzing me on who I am. They're like, "Where do you go to school?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a grad student at USC." And they're like, "Bullshit! You go to Harvey Mudd. This idiot doesn't know what he's talking about it." And I was just like, "Ugh." Have you ever been quizzed on who you are and been wrong? I'm pretty sure I go to USC, but, whatever. And if that wasn't enough, my homework assignment that I have to work on, it's this 1-week project, I have to create a contract of empathy between an individual and a stuffed animal. That's like the prompt for it, right? It's it. So this is the stuffed animal that they gave me. I'm not making this up. Look, I brought this dog to show you. And like I want to put things in this dog to try to make it feel a little more real, like put some heat, some warmth in there, some like a little mic that says something to you, make it a little bit more digital in there, but this means I have to gut a dog. I have to gut this furry, and he's soft, and it's for homework. I have to gut a dog after I get off casting a video game analysis for an hour after I woke up at 4:45 and had quiz questions on who I am. And I even, look at his smile. There used to be a smile there, but it looked really goofy. I can't have him doing that, so I had to rip the smile off this dog. Do you know how much that hurt to do? And it didn't want to come off either, so I have like a staple remover, and I'm like digging it into the dog's face. And look at his eyes. Look how stupid those eyes are. How just naive and retarded this dog looks. And I ripped his smile out. It's times like these when I realize I'm just by myself talking in a room, and my sound might not be working. So you just saw me put a stuffed dog and like shake it and do this claw motion a couple times. So hope sound's working. Let's go ahead and go over and do a little bit of the actual StarCraft action. I'm just going to rearrange my keyboard here and knock my camera around. For any of you who actually, a lot of you have been asking, what is this photo that's over my shoulder here, this one? It's actually all the Winnie the Pooh characters looking very surprised. I'm not joking. It's a charcoal drawing. It's really awesome. Now, if my camera will stay put, I will happily begin the cast. Yeah, I'm just going to scoot my mic over a little bit, unmute this, and let's just go right on into the game here. Yes, indeed. So here we go. We are beginning the Day 9 Daily. Gonna ahead and resume in. Fantastic. So, let me scroll violently upwards as I briefly adjust the dimensions of this. Fan-frickin-tastic. Alright. So, of course, everyone in Europe's very friendly. Look, good luck, have fun. There is no such thing as an angry European person, as we can clearly see from the behavior in their tournaments, which is fantastic. I mean, even at the WCGs that I attended, you know, at the grand final, you just meet these Europeans. They just be so nice. They just be like, Day, let's do good today. And he would just walk into a McDonald's and just buy a cheeseburger for a pregnant girl. And I'd be like, wow, that is so great to be around that friendly European. So this is DeMuslim, who's a fantastic Terran player. I mean, I had the pleasure of watching him in the Zotac Cup and in several other tournaments. And he's just solid. I dig him. I enjoy watching him play. And here we have the mystery man, TheLittleOne, who is ISP radio. I keep wanting to say IPS radio, but it's ISP radio, I believe. It's one permutation of those letters. And, I mean, I recognize it. It's one of those things like you see the word Zealot, but then you meet people in real life and they say Zealot. I've seen his tag before, this IPS thing, but, I've never actually figured out what on earth the pronunciation was of it, even though it's just 3 letters. But anyways, so the TheLittleOne is a really strong player who surprised a lot of people in the Team Liquid Invitational, placing second, right? Only losing to MYM in the finals. Excuse me, not MYM, to White Ra, and I'm dragging my screen away on accident. He only lost to White Ra in the finals, and was even able to take a game off White Ra, who went undefeated for the entire tournament. So, I mean, he is a beastly player. And he plays random, and he does the kookiest strategies in the world. So I want to note that up until now, everything that the TheLittleOne has been doing has been very standard, right? He did this Gateway 13, then he gassed, now he's getting his Assimilator. Very, very normal sort of stuff. Not building any Zealots early, just going straight for the Cybernetics core because Terran can't really put pressure on early. DeMuslim going for, yeah, again, something that looks like really standard in some way, shape, or form. That gas looks like a little bit later than is typical. Most players like getting a gas around, 13 if they're going to be getting it at any point. Yeah, getting the orbital command early. But anyways, what made the TheLittleOne so impressive is that he did these crazy, nutty strategies, but somehow had this super strong play to back it up. He didn't just do some BS strategy for the sake of doing a BS strategy. If you thought about it, it made complete and total sense at the time. So we're going to be focusing a lot on the TheLittleOne's play in these games. And occasionally we're going to be bouncing back here and talking about DeMuslim's play, because, he's good. There's no reason not to. But again, I want the focus to be on how the unorthodoxy comes into play in these games. Now, I want to note that the TheLittleOne recommended this game to me, and I have not actually seen it. So this is a surprise for me too. And here we have a Stalker coming out. A lot of people question getting early Stalkers in this matchup. We have a probe going out to do a little bit of scouting action. But a lot of people question getting a Stalker early on because, I mean, the Marauders just demolish Stalkers so quickly because the Stalkers are armored. However, it's ultra useful for just getting this SCV out of the base. If you make a Zealot, it's a lot more of a pain in the ass to try to get rid of it. Sentries can be a little obnoxious early on as well, so I mean, it's just pretty standard to get this. Now this decision to get the robotics facility, we need to spend a little bit of time talking about. A lot of people did this at the start, getting the Robo Bay right away, because everyone was like, oh my god, if I get Immortals, I can win immediately. This is like in the first 5 days of the beta. People just got Immortals, and Terrans were just like, good game, man, well played, nice, and that was it, that was the end of the story. Until people realized that Marine Marauder was a little bit more standard in StarCraft 2, as opposed to Mech, which was the standard in StarCraft 1. Now, with these early robotics facility openings, there's 2 big dangers. One is an all-in Marine SCV rush, which is way too cheesy for me to really discuss right now. I mean, obviously that'll just work almost all the time in that circumstance. But in particular, any sort of early one-base pressure, either with 2 or 3 barracks, getting a robotics facility that early has a lot of trouble dealing with that. Maybe on a map like Scrap Station, you'd get away with, holding it off a little bit more easily, but for the most part, that's a big concern. However, as I scoot myself over here, so people can also admire the Diablo 3 poster behind my shoulder. However, it's dangerous to look at the trends of StarCraft 2 and to say, haha, I see that one base early aggression with barracks units demolishes
this early robotics facility. Therefore, in this matchup, I need to always be opening 2 gateway, or 3 gateway warp gate, or something like that. The reason I think that's bad is because you're abandoning all the truth that you gleaned from those early days of the beta. Immortals were raping Terrans regardless of what they did for a long time. How can you capture little bits of that in what you do? So, for instance, as a standard that I do now, if I can scout my Terran opponent and I see him expanding after 1 barracks, or see him throwing down a factory after 1 barracks, I pretty much always throw down my robotics facility immediately and get the Immortal before the Observer, and actually just attack with 1 Zealot, 1 Stalker, and 1 Immortal. I might play around with those numbers a little bit, but I still get the Immortal really fast because there's not much he can do about that first early Immortal. I end up killing a lot of supply depots. I don't end up winning games necessarily, but I kill a lot of supply depots for free. Maybe kill a free tank if he's not careful, that sort of thing. So I like the fact that we are actually seeing a player still get this early robotics facility. Again, note that there are big risks to it, such as early 1-base pressure, but as we're noting here, DeMuslim is pleasantly early expanding, and I also would say very reasonably early expanding. Just going 1 barracks, expanding, and then getting a barracks up immediately thereafter. Something that I think is very strong is to actually cut back on the Marauder production and to just get stim right away. Stim Marauders are just sick. Sick as can be. And we see the Stalker doing a little bit of damage. Look at him. Look how proud he is. Look at that smug little saunter back home. And in the meantime, we have a Stalker, or a Sentry. Man, I'm still bad at naming those units. But of course, I'll just chalk it up to the fact that I am, in fact, running on the weirdest sleep schedule in the universe. Now, look at this. Now, if oh, man. Oh, this is so cool. I am delighted to be seeing this, because I claimed beforehand that the little one did creative stuff that a lot of people were not familiar with, and here he is doing it. We don't see a warp gate going down. We see 1 sentry going up, and we see him teching towards, and I've actually seen him do this against White Raw, he's teching towards Collosus drop. He's basically treating the Colossus like a Reaver in StarCraft 1. Doesn't this even look like a 1-base Reaver build in StarCraft 1? You know, you get your Stalker, if we can find that Stalker. Let's just go to the DeLittleOne cam. Where is that Stalker? There's a probe there. Ah, there's the Stalker. Yeah, he gets like Dragoons in StarCraft 1, and in the meantime gets the shuttle. And look at the timing of the shuttle, which is a warp prism in this game. Right as it finishes, the robotics facility finishes. Fantastic. And part of the reason that he's allowed to get away with this is because his opponent went for 1 barracks. If he was doing some sort of early pressure, it might be a little bit more difficult. So we're starting already to piece together what's awesome about this play. First of all, we're noticing that there was some saved chrono boost, so that he was able to chrono boost the Colossus and this Gravatic Drive, which is basically the speed upgrade for the shuttle. And by the way, I know this is called a warp prism, but I'm going to call it a shuttle. I mean, I could try to work that habit away, but whatever. Other important pieces, in addition to saving up chrono boost to get these 2 guys out very quickly, is the fact that he's getting a sentry this early on. If you get a sentry early, it helps so much with early aggression. A lot of players are going to try to come up, bust you with some sort of funky timings. You know, they might go barracks, expand barracks, and start pushing you. That's been pretty popular. Or they might be doing this to get 3 tech labs and early stim and to push you with Marauders early on. And this sentry is just so helpful in that. So probably a lot of the pausing will be happening early on as we get to go, ooh, isn't this amazing? How he is doing this crazy stuff and yet has things like this sentry to keep him alive. Because, yeah, anyone can do this Colossus drop and Colossus harass, but very few people are going to be able to get away with staying alive. So here comes the Colossus, bam, hopping on in. And, of course, continuing to probe away. We always like to keep our mouse over the Nexus to see if he's playing well. This I don't actually agree with. I mean, I was like, ooh, the little one, very unorthodox. And this is, as you'll note, unorthodox. But, I mean, why not expand here? I like the idea of taking this expansion and plopping it down at our own natural, because it takes this little shuttle harass, this warp prism harass with our friendly Colloxin inside, and it makes it stable. It makes it a little bit more defendable and a little bit less gimmicky. So here are the Marauders. Look at him, those poor Marauders, look at him running. Literally, I cannot think of anything but like a panting guy. So, the sort of panting that you'd hear from like a sumo wrestler jumping rope in an attic or something like that. And hey, look at this. Look how awesome this harass is going. Look at this. That's so fancy. That's so suave. And look, only Marauders. That's it. Look at all the focus that he has to have with these Marauders. He can just drop and he can shoot things and back off. And I mean, this Terran cannot do much of anything. I do like this, and I'll come back to this in a little bit. That's actually super good. Wow, do I like that. More harassment coming down. Look at the drop reload. Look at how fast he is. And, oh, what are you noticing? Oh, I'm actually going to rewind and try to slow this down because I didn't know if he'd be able to pull that off. But it looks like he is loading it up so quickly that the Marauder shots are never actually connecting. So we see that Marauder shot connect. This was a technique that Terran players did in StarCraft 1 where they would unload a tank, shoot, and when a Dragoon shot at the tank, they would load it up before the Dragoon shot actually reached the tank, so that tank wouldn't be taking any damage whatsoever. So, of course, those shots happen. I'm mainly looking for this little drop that happens right up here. So it looks like it has around 60 shields. So let's see another drop happen. 58 shields. Okay, so it was at 58 shields when it loaded back up. I'm real curious if it lets you do this in StarCraft 2. And hey, look, 58 shields. So that means he can drop, shoot, lift up, and against Marauders, he can end up taking no damage if he's fast enough. Very, very cool. And in the meantime, what is he doing? He's adding on more Colossi. I would love to see him add on Thermal Lance at some point. Look at that probe transfer timing. Oh, so suave. And, yep, so here is the Colossus doing more harassment. I could probably speed up beyond slower. Oh my god, that's so good. Look at how fast he is with that. Here's these poor 2 Marines trying to do some magic. I don't think so, says the Coloxan. Doing more harassment. Oh, taking a little shot there. This is marvelous, this sort of harassment here. Because in the meantime, none of these Marauders that, you know, got their very early stim, we have these 3 barracks out to be ultra-aggressive, none of it matters. All of it's getting denied just because of this Colossus harass. This is so cool. And we're adding on more sentries just to be a little bit safe. I'd prefer not to add on gas units just so we can get that thermal lance out because that's really, really, really good. But we got this expansion up. Again, pretend this expansion's here. It's going to be up solid. Just nifty. Oh, yes, serious man love. Not quite the level of man love that I have for Jinro, but still, it's getting pretty high up there. And how do you transition at this point? We see a lot of Terran players doing this. In fact, in a lot of matchups, we see Terran players just throwing down as many barracks as they can and just like, I'm going to kill him. I'm just going to keep killing him because I'm going to kill him. You know, just like, I'm going to be as aggressive as possible until he's dead, and if he's not dead, then I'm just, whatever, I'll just try again next game. This build that we're seeing right here, this Colossus harass, it's like I feel vulnerabilities in this style of play. Why don't we have more tech? I mean, in StarCraft 1, you know, the Terran would be defending with tanks and would have the option of getting a Wraith. That would deny that Warp Prism super quickly, you know. Maybe if we had the ability to get a Viking up, wouldn't that be awesome? And look, as he's transitioning, he suddenly just springs forward with all these gateways. And I'll come back to this in just a moment. But just want to note it right now. Yeah, there don't seem to be a lot of possibilities for Terran to deal with this. He's tried to sneak this Expo, which I actually liked a lot. If we were, you know, maybe getting some turrets, I don't see any engineering base here. Ooh, this is a little bit obnoxious. But sometimes when someone invests a lot in this sort of harassment, there's generally a cute way to deny it. So, for instance, a Viking in this game or having some well-placed turrets or something like that. And if you can do that, this is so much money to like Warp Prism with speed and Colossus that, you know, if you throw an extra expansion, you can hold it, then awesome. And look, using the Warp Prism to maybe try to do some extra warp harass, but I don't necessarily think that is the main focus of, or I should say, the main delight I'm having in all these gateways here. And I still think I'll hold off until this Colossus harass dies down a little bit. But yeah, so now we finally have the engineering bay, and look, a starport coming up. Don't we wish we had that factory a little bit earlier? So earlier on I was saying, ooh, I actually really like this, and that was under the presumption that if Terran could figure out a way to hold that, because really these Marauders weren't dying too quickly. It was just that the Marauders couldn't shoot up. But, you know, if Terran figures out some way to just shoot at the shuttle and put a little bit more pressure on it, I would really like the idea of snagging that expo super fast. And doing a little bit more harassment, but pulling it up just in time. So, now that this thing seems to be getting repaired, there's the Viking coming up. Let's talk a little bit about this stuff right here. I always talk so much about ordering of things. I think that is like such an important concept, and here we have some ideas about the order. Or we have I guess I'll say an example of the order. So, what am I talking about? Let's stop talking about theory and just break it down into something useful. Unit composition. Keep this in your head. Unit composition. What is the good unit composition in the matchup I'm playing right now? Let's make that your goal. A lot of people, when they do builds, they just say, okay, I'm at 18 food. What do I want to build next? Okay, I'm going to build this at 21 food, and that at 26 food, and then this at 27.5 food. And just don't stop doing that. Very bad. That should be the last step. Because if you are one of those people that just thinks, what do I want to build now with what food? The problem is that when you encounter some deviation, you go, oh crap, all my build timings are thrown off. I don't know what to do now that I'm at 30 food, because I actually lost 10 SCs to that drop. Ugh. So let's try to think of, what do I want to do way down the line? And if I can identify that, then I don't really have to rely so much on these build numbers. I just have arrows pointing to there. And I can now think of all these creative stuff to do. So for instance, against Terran, you know what's a great composition? Gateway units, in particular, a lot of Stalkers, and then a ton of Colossi, especially if you see your opponent going for some big Marine Marauder combination. So, what we see in this game, actually let me not do this game, what we see in a lot of other games is players are opening up with a lot of warp gates to try to defend themselves from this Marine Marauder early. They're expanding, they're getting the robotics facility, and then they get the Colossus, in that order. And then as they're starting to expand around, they add on more gateways, and occasionally even a second robotics facility if they can afford it. That's like a general trend that we've seen. In this game, he's changing the order. He's opening up with this Colossus drop, and then he's going to be adding on a bunch of gateways. So that way he can sort of skew his unit composition back to something a little more standard. And what I think is useful is that this is a great way of going Colossus first in terms of this composition goal down the road. So for instance, you know, if you're playing Zerg vs. Terran, and you might think to yourself, Hydra Roach seems like a good composition to have in whatever mix. Let's just say 50-50 for the example. And you've been opening Roach every single game and then going into Hydra. It might be useful to think, now what is a way that I could rush for Hydralisks, aim for getting the Roaches later, and try to figure out how to stay alive and do damage in this whole process. That's exactly what seemed to happen with this Colossus drop, right? He was going, how can I start with Colossi, do damage, oh cool, let me do a Colossus drop, and now he's just coming right back around with these warp gates, and he's going to be getting something fairly normal, just a bunch of gateway units. And look, he already has this, he already has a Templar Archives up, beautiful, he's getting this Zealot leg boost, he has this Expo up, but again, we could pretend that this Expo was here first, and then his third base was down here or something like that. I think that's much more reasonable. Meanwhile, look at this, DeMuslim's at 81 food. And we have Protoss at 89 food. Oh, looks like Protoss is getting a little bit of a leaderoo here. I kind of want to see a Forge earlier on, because I just think people in general are neglecting upgrades at this state in the game. But look at that timing on that transfer. You know, a pinch early, but, you know, whatever, no big deal. It's still very, very nice. And it looks like he's using his shuttle to just rearrange his units. But okay, cool. Cool, you know what? This is great. Because what have we seen? We've seen a crazy, insane opening of Warp Prisms and Colossi. But right now, if we just look at the state of the game, what, Protoss has 3 bases, Protoss has Warp Gates, made some Colossi, made some Templar. That looks so normal. That is such a standard thing to be going for. That is always the sign of a solid player, is someone who can do something nutty at first, but always transitions to something nice and smooth. Something very normal. I'm briefly going to adjust this viewer window just a noodle. There we go. And look, more dropping action. Seems completely awesome. And killing off these mules. Look how great that range is. He doesn't even have to move. He can shoot him from so far away and then just scooting right out before the Vikings can get there. Oh man, I actually love the Viking speed now. I see that that is just great for shuttle harass. This makes it very interesting. They have long range but just slow speed. And getting some more observers, getting the more warp gates, but cool game thus far. Just Zealot Templar. And, you know, continuing to make units. Looks like he really wants a lot of probes at this expo, rallying all the way across the map. Getting more observers. I don't see a second robotics facility. Getting Dark Templar, which I think are always solid. And it looks like Terran did in fact scan this expo. Going to the DeMuslim cam. No, wow, he actually hasn't scanned it. He has no idea that that's there. Oh yeah, look, he's just poking down here. Whoopsie daisies. Oh man, that, honestly, this is one of the worst feelings ever, is when you get here and you're just like, oh my god. And then you like click on the mineral patch and you're like, oh god, he's mined 500 from like each patch? Jesus. So, let DeMuslim's pain in this game be a lesson to you. You should always scout expos, like religiously. Just scout them. Even if it doesn't really make that much sense. Even if you're like 40 food. It's good practice to just send a scout out. Maybe 40 food's a little bit early, you know, but the instant you're ever feeling like, you know, he either has a little bit too many units or a little bit too few units, just send a scout out. And even before that, because, I mean, you will lose a ton of games to people, and it's so easy to just go, oh, it was a stupid loss, he just hit an expansion. But then not to learn from it, you know? Don't think of this as a stupid loss. Think of this as a legitimate strategy, expanding, and expecting you not to scout, because frankly, so many people forget to scout that it ends up being solid in a lot of circumstances, and you want to make that unsolid. So hey, we have a warp prism here, and you know what else is cool about this? Not only did it allow for early harass, but now I don't have to build pylons all over the map. I can just go into phasing and warp a whole bunch of units there, and it looks like he just, I think, correctly sacked the expansion without really doing too much. Not many Colossi being built. I wouldn't mind continuing to make Colossi, but it looks like he's just going straight for ground armies, saying, whatever, you made Vikings, I'm going to sidestep this by just not making any more Colossi. And for any of you who didn't know, Storm is just the hurt on Marine Marauder armies. This is part of the danger, though, is you really need to have these those Templar in a good spot to avoid EMP. So we're going to slow this battle down. And I think I will put on the health bars for this battle. Just look how much damage the Storm does. Look at how yellow that's getting. But I generally keep health bars off. There was a ghost in here at some point. I don't see it. That is so scary to deal with. That is one of your absolute biggest concerns in this game as Protoss, is just how do I deal with that freaking ghost when I have Templar. So nice micro by DeMuslim. And this micro you're seeing is part of the reason why so many players open up Marauder with a lot of Tech Lab add-ons with Stim. Again, yeah, it seems that this was vulnerable to the Collosus drop, but you know, it held down decently fine. And as we're seeing here, that exact micro is the reason why. And uh-oh, here's some Templar. Do I even have enough for Storm? No, uh-oh, we got one. Storm, Valiant Warrior, and oh, ouch, oh. Oof, brutal. Speeding it up. What a savage psionic storm that was. That's such an awesome word. I met a guy who just uses it, you know, like, oh, it was cool, man. It was dope. You know, he's like, oh, I was savage, man. What's your favorite TV show? Oh, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, man. That show's savage. And I've taken a liking to this, man. Now, Dark Templar are a very useful unit. I think they're a little bit underrated early on. I mean, most of the stuff that we're seeing right now in this game is standard, disappointingly so. We'd want to see some way that the little one figures out how to nuke with Protoss. But, you know, I briefly want to say that Dark Templar are very useful against one-basing Terrans, and occasionally two-basing Terrans who get a little too greedy with the mules. You can do things like place a Dark Templar here, and then one here, and then another one here, or something like that, early on, and expand aggressively, because they'll need scans to be able to advance forward. Very easy way to manage the Terrans. Same way the Dark Templars work in StarCraft 1. But I mean, a lot of this Marine Marauder junk early is just a real pain to deal with. And you can go 3 Warp Gate and deal with it appropriately. Just, use Zealots and Sentries to force field stuff appropriately. But, it's always a little fun to have something that's just a straight shutdown. Like, you want to move at me? Well, you need scan, and I will eat up your scan until I can expand. Because one thing to note about the unit cost for the Dark Templar, they're 125, 125, but that generally just means they are expensive on gas, since you end up with a lot of money, way more money than you have gas. So, if something is even cost, then you basically are thinking, well, how am I going to go spend my money? Whoa, my computer started lagging, but alas, it is good again. And I have to be careful with that because during the Team Liquid Star League Invitational, not Team Liquid Star League, just the Team Liquid Invitational, a little shift clicking going on. During the Team Liquid Invitational, I was doing so much processing on the computer that I thought it shorted out my webcam. It was actually that for anyone who's into electronics is going to love this. I think a capacitor blew out. Like, my USB plug port is not working, and it smelled like burning. But that is a miracle. The capacitor blew, and my computer didn't shut down in the middle of the cast. So, even though I was pissed at the time that technology seemed to hate me, thank you, technology, for not completely crashing in the middle of that stream. But either way, coming right back, my technology is working appropriately now. I'm getting some Vikings, a little high on the Viking count, especially after we saw the lack of Colossi. But let's actually just go back briefly to DeMuslim's base and just sort of look at his composition. Seems like there are a lot of tech labs and just no reactors, just no value being put on Marines at all. Now, something I do want to briefly note, a Marine, let me see if I'm saying this right. So a Marine without stim does a little bit more damage, like more damage per second, than a Marauder without stim. Shooting just a normal unit. I think the Marine does like 7 damage per second, and the Marauder, without the armor bonus, does a little under 7. So this means that the Marauder, when it is against an armored unit, is doing like a little under 14. And it's slowing that unit down. But a Marine, when it's stimmed, is, or let me rephrase it, 2 Marines without stim, which is the same mineral cost as a Marauder, does about 14 damage per second. So let me just repeat that again. A Marauder, with the armor bonus, is dealing about a little under 14 damage per second, and 2 Marines without stim are dealing about 14 damage per second. But the Marines are doing this to all types of units, and the Marauders are only doing that same amount of damage versus armored units. So in a sense, Marines, the whole point of all this is that Marines deal a little bit more damage than Marauders. I believe, if the math is correct. And I've sort of felt that in some of the games that I've played. Like, I reviewed a Terran vs. Protoss I played on Collusus Ravine, and it seemed like I was holding off an impossible amount of gateway units just by having Marines pump out. I think the reason why this ends up being balanced in a game theory sense is that the Sentry's Guardian Shield does like -2 damage to incoming shots, or just in general any armor affects Marines a lot more than it affects Marauders, but still, that's useful for me to think about, because it motivates me to get a few more Marines if he's not making that many armored units. So just something to note right now. I don't know what to do with that information, but that's some information that I want to bestow upon you. So for any of you guys who are in this sort of tech lab crazy life, you know, living it up, rebelling against your parents' wishes and making no reactors, you know, you might want to just back up, be a little bit more orthodox, I suppose I'd say. Because I've felt like Marines are good earlier on. I definitely feel like Marauders with Stim are super freaking awesome. But I'm going to experiment around with just getting a little bit more on the Marine front and just see how it feels. Particularly in these late game scenarios. So here's a Dark Templar. Look at him. Wow, he's been power walking. Look at his speed. Oh, my goodness, he exercises. And hey, look, we have a standard ground composition. Apparently with 2 probes who are feeling very brave and want to be part of the mix. I'm going to go ahead and slow it down a little bit, because I always like to slow it down in the battle. We're starting to see this lack of diversity hurt a little bit, it's feeling like. I mean, Storms are just going to eat this alive. There's some nice EMPs there, but I kind of would have liked to see something a little bit more happen there. Again, funky choice of expanding up here. Probably would have preferred it here. And thankfully, because I'm a bit slower, I can just go right back to the battle, no problem. And here we have the Dark Templar doing a little bit of hurt here, but look at how red all this stuff is. This is what's really scary about these Templar composition armies. Trying to think, because I mean, to be honest, when you see this sort of damage, you shouldn't go, oh, I shouldn't go infantry, because if he has Storm, then whatever. I mean, in StarCraft 1, there were things like Lurkers against Medic Marine. Seems completely one-sided on paper, but it ends up being okay, because the way tanks and vessels sort of work, whatever. So maybe that's the way that EMP, you treat it. You're just like, oh, whatever. You get some Ravens, you get some Ghosts, you just, throw some peanuts at them, it's no problem. And it looks like the Muslims feeling a little bit hurting on the money front. Oh, look, and you know what? More just solid play. Now, again, if we're tuning into this game now, and we didn't know anything about this sort of funky harassment we did with Colossi, we'd be like, oh yeah, it's a pretty normal game. Looks like there was some intense battles down here. But yeah, it looks like we're seeing a Marine Marauder medevac army with some Ghosts against just like a ground army. Cool. Seems reasonable. And more stuff that's solid. There was just a huge battle down here. I'm actually going to rewind because I'm almost certain this is the case. Let's just go ahead and speed this up. I don't know if this battle has... Oh, whoops. Yeah, look, there's this DT that was there. And then the big battle that we're going to see actually happened up here. And then look at this big battle moving down. This is the one where I slowed it down and talked about the, of course, 2 overbold probes. And then look, DT just going right back on in. That is such just like standard, oh yes, I know what the hell I'm doing sort of play. Make sure you do that. So that way, I'll review your games and talk about how awesome you are to tons and tons of nerds across the world. And of course, I don't mean nerd in a derogatory sense. If you're a nerd, just like fist pump in your room right now and pat yourself on your head, because you friggin' are awesome, man. And we have the DTs doing their good old work, but this DT, I think, is the money DT, man. This DT gets it, if you know what I mean. Would like to see a little more expanding here, maybe some expanding down here. I mean, Protoss does have quite a bit of money, but, overall fundamentals are good. There's obviously stuff that you can work on. You can always find stuff to work on if you want to be real nitpicky with yourself, but the most important lesson I think that I'm taking away from this game is, hey, you can do some nutty, crazy stuff, and when you transition it into something standard, you can have something marvelous. Oh, you can have something that you want to put on a resume. In spare time, I enjoy mountain biking, electronic music, and being a goddamn genius at StarCraft 2. Seriously, man, they'll be like, ooh, we should put him in a managerial position. And more DTs doing their thing. Just coming on in here. I'm enjoying this general aggression, and I'm also especially enjoying DeMuslim's use of these Vikings. Hey, that seems like a great use for Vikings. No Colossi to be found? Well, whatever. Let me just go scout around for expos and try to kill stuff. I actually think that in the future, that's something that would end up happening a lot earlier. And, oh, command center. Every time a command center burns down, I die a little inside. It's like that person you see speed up to the yellow light, only to, second guess themselves right when it turns red and they stop and you can tell their neck hurts a little bit. You're like, oh, God, I feel bad for that person. So, again, huge ground army. While DeMuslim was dealing with all this junk up here, and slowly mining himself dry, this Protoss took out his other expansion and is building up a nice big solid army. A little unfortunate that Protoss lost that, and that the probes are just trying to manner this poor other little probe as hard as they can. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it looks just like DeMuslim's at an advantage and is going to maintain his advantage for the remainder of the game. Yeah, and re-expanding down here. Again, I'm not so sure how I feel about this play up here. I'm liking the Vikings moving around still. Kind of funny that, oh hey, get out, get out. I don't think so. And nice little spread, warping and stuff up here. Having a standing army here, warping and stuff here. Just good general use of warp gates. Protoss, I was actually saying earlier on, I don't like so much an expo up here. But I guess it's definitely more okay to do this sort of expanding in StarCraft 2. Because, hey, I have pylons. I can warp in anywhere here. I can even warp a whole army in here after a little while. But I still, solid fundamentals just say you should expand here because it's safer. I mean, even though you can warp in stuff here, you can warp in stuff here and be on the other side of the map to your opponents. I mean, I'm just not so sure about it. But still, you know, getting creative, just keeping his creative name. DeMuslim re-expanding, trying to hold down, still macroing quite well out of his 5 barracks. Getting the Giganto army. What are some other good fundamentals that we might be seeing? Keeping High Templar in the back. Oh, looks like one High Templar got sniped. Alas, alas. Is he warping in more Templar? Oh, looks like he did have some Templar in the back. Prepped and ready to storm, and a sentry at the front. That's why sentries are so cool. Okay, so now I'm actually starting to see another cute, solid thing that I wasn't thinking about before. The idea of expanding to mains and using sentries to just continually block the ramp. You know, that almost reminds me of Zerg vs. Terran in StarCraft 1. Zerg burrows lurkers at the ramp. Medic Marine can't get up. You need drop. Well, now here, it's sentries are the new lurker, man. You're not going to kill anything, but you are literally going to prevent anything from even beginning to walk up that base. So that is actually so interesting that I want to play after this instead of sleeping, which is what I should do. But yeah, you can expand to other mains as Protoss and just constantly force field the front. And look at this, bought all this time for the army to regroup. Clever, and re-expanding here as well. Some more storming action going on. And again, as we can see from this replay progress bar, it's going to be done very, very soon. Some nice micro with these Marauders, but alas, it seems that it is not meant to be. Micro can only do so much when one player can just attack, move, and just storm you to death. So we're going to go ahead and open up for some questions, but first I want to say that, because I always forget to say this, you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is Day9TV. DAY, number 9, TV. You should follow me, and you should fill up my inbox. I sincerely hope I get to see my inbox fill up in real time as I unmute the chat and take some questions. So, unmuting the chat, there we go. So again, the big theme, just to reiterate while I let some questions just sort of flood in here, is that unorthodox stuff is cool. Don't feel hyper-motivated to be crazy unorthodox all game long, but if you want to do that sort of thing, the best way to do it is to think of some end goal that's reasonable, and unit mix seems really good. Collosus plus Warp Gate army. So once I do this, once I have that fixed, now I can think of something crazy, like, ooh, fast Colossus drop. Now how do I get to that good unit mix? Alright, cool, I have some ideas. Let's go ahead and mute the chat, because I can't read that quickly. So Slap says, Dear Day9, do you think that the little one could have picked up charge somewhere in his build? He actually did get charge very quickly for Zealot. I'm actually surprised at how quickly he got it. But it was cool because what I loved about his timing with the charge is that it felt like a timing. You know, because the biggest the biggest danger that people have, or not the danger, but the biggest trend that I've seen people do is they sort of just get stuff when they can afford it. So Protoss vs. Terran in StarCraft 1, you know, you open up with a lot of Dragoons as Protoss, you're getting Dragoons, that's great, and then you suddenly start getting a bunch of Zealots, and the speed upgrade for Zealots finishes right when you have like 24 Zealots and Terran is thinking about beginning his first push, so you can really crush it. In this game, right as Terran started to be stable and start to be able to hold off these Colossus drops, and Protoss really had to back off, that's when Protoss had his charge for Zealots done. Alright, sweet, that seems pretty cool. So I really, really insanely love the fact that that looked that way. So sorry if I didn't mention that enough, I sort of just breezed over it. Z-Lasher says, do you think the little one, okay, I can't read. Let me try this again. Z-Lasher says, do you think if the little one had gotten Thermal Lance earlier, he could drop the Colossus from enough range to get off 2 shots on the Marauders and even pick up the Colloxin, why thank you, before the Marauders could even get in range and fire? So, I mean, yes, I think that's absolutely a possibility. There's some other things that I'd want to think about, like how to... Thermal Lance is expensive and takes a lot of time. does it get in the way of not dying to something else? Because that's one of those questions that, yeah, I mean, if he had Thermal Lance, man, that would have helped a ton. That would have been really useful. You have to be a little careful, though, because you need to unload and then make sure the Warp Prism can see far enough for the Colossus to be able to do something useful, so you know how to plan the Colossus movement. Assuming that's fine. Getting the Thermal Lance can only be good there, but it's making sure that you don't die to something else. So for instance, let's say that he just got turrets up and placed them in positions that would be able to repel the Warp Prism, and in particular the Colossus. Remember that Colossi take damage from missile turrets. So let's say that happened, and then the Terran counterattacks. What if the Protoss just has 3 Colossi with Thermal Lance, and that's it? That's his whole army. Not nearly as good as 2 Colossi and a bunch of ground units that can throw down some force fields, do some more variety at the very least, be blockers for the Colossus. All that sort of stuff's good. So that's the sort of thing that I would say it requires practice. I would first try doing this build before you start doing any changes to it, because, I mean, for instance, I've never done this build. I've never gone Colossus drop in any matchup, but it seems sweet, so I want to try it out. Let's go ahead and take some more fantastic questions from the wonderful dedicated viewers who are tuning in to listen to me talk about StarCraft. Yes. Okay, so Dady says, personally, I think that DeMuslim cuts back on the diversity and all the damage per second in favor of mass Marauders because of the high health, which allows them to survive storms, and, I mean, also, just the Colossus Lance and that sort of thing. What do you think about this? What do I think about this? Always swallow before you inhale. Alright, what do I think about it? Alright, cool. I think that people are still suffering from one control group syndrome. Because you can box in a one control group, and because Blizzard has these nice one control group management utilities implemented, you can tab through. It intelligently puts the important one first. Like if you select a bunch of Zealot Stalkers and Sentries, it will have the Sentries be selected first because it knows you want to be casting spells with this group, all that stuff. That gets in the way a lot of times of just good general unit positioning. Like in StarCraft 1, if I have 48 Hydralisks, I have to put them into 4 different groups, but then I can set up a nice ring around a Protoss army, and when I move in, if I feel some storms coming, I can pull back like 1, 2, 3, 4 really easily, instead of having to like box and then move around and rearrange or something like that. So helpful, and I think that you might even be able to avoid getting mass Marauders if you just control your stuff a little bit more. I don't want to say intelligently, I want to say more disciplinedly. Just forcing yourself to split them up, because I'm not going to lie, after like a month of playing with StarCraft 2, it's so easy just to like shift, keep boxing. I'm trying to train myself to think about what's hotkeyed where, because it falls out of my brain really, really, really quickly. So, I mean, like the mass Marauders I feel like are great early on, but I have felt them be less effective over time. Excuse me. It feels better to have more diversity, in particular to have those Marines in there as well. And I still don't have an opinion about other gas units. I really feel like getting Ravens and eventually battle cruisers is like the money transition in this matchup. Because if you're getting just like too many Marauders, I mean, not only is it you end up being pretty decent against all the Terran units, or all the Protoss units, but not like amazing. And also Protoss can just make a bunch of Immortals and demolish you. Like I literally remember a game where this guy was just crushing me. He was going mass Marauders off 6 barracks and 2 base, and I literally just got 7 Immortals and 3 Templar, and I just killed his whole army immediately. Like it was instant. Like we were even in food, and he just dropped half my food in one battle. So I mean, yeah, there's no unit diversity there, but I really feel like I'm not saying it's bad, but there are ways to get around it that I think involve control or just other planning type stuff. So I guess that's my long-winded non-answer to that. I just don't know. I need to think. I actually just need to have like 5 more months to play the game and see what's more standard. So let's take just a few more questions, because we've been going for about an hour now. It's almost 11. So, let's take Steamer's questions. Day 9, would the Terran have benefited from switching to a Reaper harass of his own once he saw the Colossus harass coming? That's really smart. He has the tech needed to pump them out, and Reapers could have negated the effectiveness of sentries, forcing the Colossus to play a defensive role early on, therefore leaving his SCVs alone so he can react to unorthodox strategy with Vikings. That's genius. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that. Do that, actually. That's what I'm going to do. I've actually been watching, I need to have a longer answer than that. I don't want to just be like, yes, good, excellent. Well done, Steamer-san. So I've been watching a lot of games between Jinro and Nazgul, and Jinro has been experimenting a lot more with Reapers, and in particular, just like, he's starting to slowly build up gas, because Marauders don't really take that much gas, especially if you can get 3 or 4 geysers running. So he'll just research the nitro packs for the Reapers, and suddenly he'll just make like 5 Reapers out of his 5 barracks, just like one production cycle of Reapers, and just wreak hell on Nazgul's base, and end up throwing Naz way off. And that, I think, is something that has not been experimented around with very much at all by a lot of players that I think will. And this description that Steamer gives, I think, is perfect. You see this Colossus harass coming, you go, wow, that's a lot of resources I'm seeing right there. I'm going to make Reapers and counter harass, because I know my Marauders can just smash this Colossus if my Marauders can get close to the Colossus. So, he's going to be doing a lot of running around. No reason to just make more Marauders here. I may as well tech to the Vikings and just build the Reapers. So, cool. Sounds like we have already discovered a solution, and by we, I mean Steamer. So let's just take one last fantastic question. And by the way, I just want to say that my email box is enormous. Holy crap. Okay, so I had 480 unread messages, and now I have 605 unread messages. So thank you, Twitter. So so I'm actually going to take this question from Alu, who is posting in a festive yellow, who says, it seemed that the harassment kept DeMuslim from attacking early on when the DeLittleOne was more vulnerable. How would the DeLittleOne best stop DeMuslim early on if DeMuslim did choose to attack? So, in general, it's way more dangerous to attack than it might feel, because it's so easy to look at this state of the game, and let me come back here. Let me actually went to the wrong spot. I can actually do this and have the minimap update in real time. It's like at this point, when, this Colossus is running around, and then you look and say, okay, there's an expansion over here, and there's like, what, a sentry? Well, there's like a stalker there. Oh, cool. Why not just take all these Marauders and go attack? Well, the big problem, I would say, is shuttle speed. Or I suppose I should say warp prism speed. Because that warp prism's so fast, the Colossus can kill off a bunch of SCVs and still make it home in time to defend. And just as another example, this is exactly the way that Reaver drops worked in StarCraft 1 against Terran orbs. So I think the best thing to glean from this is not to say, oh, don't attack when you're harassing. It's more to say, if you're harassing, make sure you do have a backup plan, and something as simple as speed is good enough. The equivalent for Terran might be just like stim. Just having stim is good enough. Having blank researched so that you can do whatever, that's good enough. And as a defender, it's okay just to sort of like hold down and go for some sort of timing attack. And not to overreact. As much as I like that expansion at the north, I like an expansion, by the way, just to make sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, as much as I say I liked this up here at the north, I like this expansion if there is a studied plan of how to defend it. If it's just sort of a panic move, like, oh shit, I'll expand, you don't have to do that. It's generally very effective just to hold the harassment and then just woof, just swoosh forward hard, like right when you get Vikings and you're like, yeah, no harass is getting in my base, ever, done. Bam, you attack and the Protoss seems really, really vulnerable. In fact, the entire play that the DeLittleOne really was doing seemed like, how do I hold off the timing push that happens right when my Colossus harass stops being effective? So that is going to wrap up Day 9 Daily number 91. I thought this was a fantastic episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Just in terms of some of the other stuff that's going on, I believe I'm casting the Zotac Cup again this weekend. As usual, I'll be doing the MLG show matches. There was a wonderful series between Idra and Cathan Luck that you guys should check out on TeamLiquid.net. Just look up MLG. The beta podcast will be coming back because I accidentally, first I went to GDC, so I missed that. I was like, we'll do it next week, Team Liquid. Then I went to the hospital, and then my friend Tristan went to Vegas, being all selfish, But, it'll definitely be coming back in the future. And I think that's going to wrap that up. Yeah, so definitely check out the MLG stuff. Remember, Idra vs. Cathan Luck just came up, and you should vote for who's going to be coming up next in the next week's stuff. So, yeah, that's it. I'm done. Take it easy, guys, and cheers.